In the hills of northern Georgia, nestled in the southern end of the Appalachian Mountain Range, lies the little town of Blairsville. It's a nice little town that's just far enough away from the hustle and bustle of Atlanta to be a very peaceful place. But Blairsville has a very unique claim to fame because within a few miles of the center of town there are not one, but two great O-gauge model railroads. And even though they are but a few miles apart, they are worlds apart in their design philosophy. On one side of town is the Misty Mountain Railroad. This is a well-done high rail layout with broad curves, excellent scenery, detailed buildings, and full O-scale size trains. And over on the other side of town is where you'll find Jim Steed's Great Georgia Central and Southern Railway. This is a classic Lionel post-war layout, and it's a testament to the power of first impressions. They last a lifetime.
My dad wanted to buy me a train, and we had to wait till after the war was over. I was 4 or 5 years old. We went to downtown King Hardware in Atlanta on Peachtree Street. We went into the King Hardware store, went to the train department, and I remember Dad buying a 224 steamer, a Lionel starter set. Came in a box about so big, and I remember actually carrying that box out myself. We brought it home, we put it on the living room floor. It had 11 pieces of track, 1 uncoupler, 1 lock-on, 2 pieces of wire, and 4 barrels that went into the gondola car. And I have every piece of that train except the original 2 wires that went from the transformer to the lock-on, and of course the track disappeared many years ago, being rusty, old, and greasy. I've had a train layout almost all my life. Certainly during the 40s and 50s and the heyday of the 50s, I remember we outgrew the starter set. We got 2 022 switches, I believe. And Dad got a piece of plywood that was 4 by 12 feet in length. You don't find a 12-foot sheet of plywood this day and time. So with the 022 switches and the 12-foot sheet of plywood, we had room for a pretty good pike. After college, I was a 1A classification. The Vietnam War was heating up. It was 1965, and the service came along. And served my 3 1/3 years in the service, and came out, and soon after married. Trains pretty well took a back seat. My daughter Elizabeth came along in 1972, which further put the trains in the back seat. However, it wasn't long. 5 years later, 1977, I built a new home in Atlanta, and the trains came out of the closet because it did have a full basement. We started off again with 4 sheets of plywood. It soon went to 6. And ultimately, when I moved out of that house 25 years later, I was up to 13 sheets of plywood. I lived in that house 25 years. I have recently retired from the state of Georgia after a 34-year career and built this home in the North Georgia mountains. We designed the layout for the maximum. It's 28 sheets of plywood, which is at least more than double what I had in Atlanta. And that's the ultimate layout for me. I'm not a scenic railroad man. I don't have a lot of mountains and tunnels here. I'm pretty well flat plywood, painted green the old-fashioned way. The streets are painted gray. And that appeals to me. It appeals to me because it's, well, perhaps goes back to that original 4 by 12 sheet of plywood that I never got away from. So it's not that I don't choose to go super scenic high rail, it's just that I choose to keep the old Plasticville, the old tubular track.
Plasticville buildings and tubular track give Jim's layout a wonderful 1950s retro look. This is the layout a youngster in the 1950s dreamed about, and Jim has taken those dreams and made them real with the construction of the Great Georgia Central and Southern Railway. Let's take a tour of the road. We'll start here in the Snow Village, where Jim's original 224 set is still in operation today. Jim's wife, Gail, built this part of the layout.
Jim and I both love snow, and he wanted to do a snow village. And he had a lot of Department 56 buildings, as well as some others from the dollar store that started off the basis of the village. And he thinks I have a little bit of talent in painting. I'm not so sure about that. But he asked me if I would start with doing the groundwork, meaning the floor of the village, and we decided we wanted to paint it white for snow. He wanted to incorporate mountains, and we did a one-dimensional plywood board frame to do the background of the mountains, and I looked out at the mountains in our own backyard and just kind of put paint to board and created the effects of the dimensions of the mountains. And from there we found some little reindeer and some trees and spotted them along the way. And I had a good time doing it. I had not picked up a paintbrush in probably 20 some odd years, and it was giving me a chance to learn how to hold the brush again. So it's not a great artist job, but I enjoyed doing it. It was a teamwork. It was the first project we did to start the entire layout. Jim and I are both very nostalgic. We like small town USA, and a lot of the scenes on the Snow Village remind me of the Norman Rockwell style of life. And I grew up in the 50s, and it just brought back a lot of memories for me to put together the village and the scenes.
Moving on around the layout, one of my prized possessions is the power station. It's a replica, of course, of the original Lionel. One of the nicer pieces on the layout, I think. It's certainly huge and mammoth, adds a lot of color, but I like smokestacks. In fact, you'll see a lot of smokestacks on my layout. I use inverted table legs. Go to Home Depot, the craft section, the hobby section, whatever, and you can find the coffee table legs. And if you'll notice, it looks pretty much like a smokestack. If you turn it upside down, in fact, they even give you the screw to screw it into the bottom of the coffee table. You just turn it over upside down and screw it right into the layout, right into my plywood board. The Hellgate Bridge, certainly a prized possession. Always got things for Christmas. That's all I ever wanted for Christmas. Never a sweater, never a shirt, never a pair of trousers. Always a Lionel gift or a Lionel car or a Lionel accessory. This past Christmas, Gail gave me the 116 station. It's an MTH reproduction. It was made 4 or 5 years ago. Had a hard time finding it. Had to go to the MTH locator section, and we found a dealer in New York, and Gail had it shipped down to me just in time for Christmas this year, and it's right there on the layout. People ask me about the church that's across the street from the 116 station. The church is actually a music box. In fact, I got the church for $1 at a thrift store. That's the fun of this hobby, is that you see things that you think will work, and it doesn't have to be expensive. The Bascule Bridge, Gail again gave that bridge to me earlier. So she's been quite a partner in this project. You'll see a lot of Plasticville. There it is. I love Plasticville. I've got every Plasticville house that I received from the 50s on. The barn, the bungalows, the churches, the 2-story farmhouses, the 2-story colonial houses, the Frosty Bar, etc. I've got every piece. I think it's correct to say that every Plasticville item has every piece, and not one single piece is missing. All the chimneys are there, all the weather vanes are there. I think everything is complete. My mom and dad always taught me to take care of my toys, put them on the toy shelf at the conclusion of the day or after play. And my dad was very strict about how I cared for the toys. So when I was given a Plasticville item in the early 50s, I didn't lose the antenna on the smokestack or the chimney. I didn't lose the small pieces. They didn't get away. And it's kind of nostalgic, but I always hearken back to those early Plasticville buildings, and I just didn't let them get away. There's a Marks truck terminal on the layout. Made by Marks. It wasn't made for a train layout as such. It was made in the early 50s for a young boy or girl to play cars and trucks with and back trucks up to a terminal to unload freight. I've modeled or put the Railway Express logo in it on the terminal, and to me it is where the freight and the express parcels are separated prior to delivery. You'll notice from my engineer's cap that I love Railway Express. That's one of my my favorite logos. In fact, I modeled my own logo for the Great Georgia Central and Southern Railway somewhat after the Railway Express logo. I love green, I love yellow and gold, I love red. I love the triangular look of Railway Express logo. So that's one of my favorite pieces. I picked it up at a TCA meet in Atlanta. To me, it's my Railway Express terminal. Various structures on the layout come from just simply scratch building. I'll get an idea and, for instance, look at the turntable. You'll see the turntable is really an illusion. I modeled the girders just simply out of scrap lumber from the house being built, and the turntable doesn't work at all. Now, the track that goes through the center of the turntable is a live working track, but it is an illusion. It does not spin, but it looks good sitting there with various steamers parked on the turntable. The maintenance shed is something that I scratch built. It is actually a Kentucky Fried Chicken takeout box. Another item I made for my dad, you'll see a small factory, and you'll see his name on the manufacturing plant. It'll say Steed Manufacturing, established 1907. I have the greatest respect for my dad. He taught me the things to do. He gave me the things that would keep me occupied and keep me out of trouble, and I have the highest respect for my best friend ever, Frank Steed. The plaque on the board on the entryway to the layout is dedicated to my dad, because he's the one that inspired me to come along and operate trains, have fun with trains, and develop a train layout. The engine that I respect the most, as well as my 224 first steamer, but the real engine is the 773 Hudson. Dad again took me back to King Hardware on Peachtree Street. The year was 1950. The 50th anniversary of Lionel was being celebrated, and as we all know, the famous 773 Hudson was delivered. A great semi-scale engine, and this engine on the layout is that engine that Dad bought that Saturday morning at King Hardware in Atlanta. People ask me, where is my personal collection? And I say, well, the personal collection is actually on the board. I really don't have anything as such in the box or on the shelf. I don't know, I guess I just hate to see something in a box. If you buy a train, I can't stand to see it in the box. I want to see the valve gear operating, I want to hear the horn blow, and I want to see the wheels turn. Unfortunately, I guess I just don't have the money or expense to buy one to operate and one to stay in the box. I enjoy showing trains. I don't enjoy showing boxes on a shelf that are collecting dust. I enjoy trains, I love trains, and I enjoy people operating trains with me.
The smell of ozone from the old Pullmore motors, the clickety-clack of the wheels on tubular track, the faint buzzing of the reversing unit inside the locos, all these things bring back fond memories for anyone who had a classic Lionel post-war layout. It takes a lot of power to run all these trains and accessories, but Jim has designed a good setup. And like his layout, his control panel is right out of the 50s, with a Z and two ZWs providing track power for the trains. Jim also uses a 600-watt, 12-volt fixed-voltage outdoor lighting transformer for all the street lights and building lights. But what's really impressive about Jim's panel are these 50 Lionel switch controllers that he uses to control all the switches on the layout. Now this is an impressive sight. Jim uses another 600-watt, 12-volt transformer to power all the switches, the lights in these controllers, and the lights in the switches themselves. He also devised a very unique way to keep those switch lights from melting the switch housings.
Lionel switches have presented a little bit of a problem, at least the newer switches. I noticed that the lanterns were getting very hot. I remedied this by two situations. One, I drilled a hole out in the lantern top, and I actually went with a 1/4-inch hole to let the heat come out of the lantern. That was not satisfactory. Some lanterns were still beginning to just waver a little bit. You could see the plastic just starting to get too hot and just have a little bit of a ripple in them. And then also going with a 24-volt bulb, which I run off of the 12-volt transformer under the table. Gives a lower light, a more realistic light, and it keeps the heat down so that the lantern cap will not melt.
Jim also developed a very unique way to set up and operate his post-war accessories.
On a layout this big, you can run 25-car trains. We remember the old box cars, the old tin-plate box cars of the late 40s, 50s, etc. The milk cars, the coal cars, operating coal cars. They were very heavy. They were made a lot of metal. Very heavy cars. You can't pull those cars more than 4, 5, 6 with any engine without spinning the wheels, even with magna traction. So I decided to take the old heavy cars, the heavy milk car, I think that's one of the heaviest cars Lionel made, and just put it on a dedicated track. In fact, that particular track on the layout has no switches. It's about 15 feet long, but the illusion is you don't see either end, so therefore you don't know that it's just a dedicated track. So I lined up all of my old operating heavy cars on that one track. And I dedicated one transformer for different voltage control because every accessory always operates on a different voltage. That way I don't have to drag those heavy cars around the layout. And again, from the control panel, you have to think about it. To line up the milk car exactly on the uncoupling track section to operate from a control point that may be 30 feet away is impossible. You just can't do it. So I just simply walk around, and for the show and tell, I will bring the people to that particular part of the layout, control my voltage with a dedicated transformer, and then push the buttons for operation. And it works well. People like that.
The best thing about Jim's layout is that everything works. Every train, every car, every switch, and every accessory works just the way it's supposed to. That's a remarkable accomplishment and a testament to Jim's desire to make his dream as real as possible.
Some people might say I'm the mayor of Lionelville. Well, I like to say I'm maybe the chief architect. Let somebody else be the mayor. I'm the chief architect, and I'm, for instance, for Christmas, Gail gave me the 116 MTH Repro Lionel station from the early 30s. It took the place of the small Plasticville Union station. Well, that's the growth that I'm talking about. I needed a big station in a big area of the layout, and being the chief architect, I can do that. And that gives me a lot of fun and thrill to redesign, to bring in the new building, and relocate something else. And that's fun. I like it. I like to do that. I'm retired, and I can spend all the time I need here in Lionelville.
It's certain that working on this layout's a lot of fun, and Jim's imagination has helped him hone his enjoyment of this hobby to a fine edge.
I love to envision that when my train runs, it's really running down the real right-of-way. I enjoy the might of the engine and putting myself in the engineer's cabin and realizing that I could be running that train down the real right of way. That gives me a thrill. It's a good moral hobby. It teaches skills and organization and decency. It's a part of our past, and I think that every child should start out with a Lionel train.